Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Melanie Tana. I love to talk about stories of all kinds in all different forms, and today I will be talking about the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins and its film adaptation. This is the first ever prequel about the Hunger Games trilogy, following President Snow before he became president, and focusing on his late teens, early 20s era, post-war, trying to attain power and figure out what he believes in and what he wants. And it's interesting. I want to talk about a few specific things that you can learn from this prequel and what makes it different, or what makes it work like some other good, solid prequels. This isn't a total review, because I could go into the pacing of the story, since both the book and the film have a bit of an iffy third act, but I don't need to. There are many things we can learn from the story as creators and appreciate as readers or viewers, and I think that the filmmakers did an excellent job. I think Suzanne Collins knows what she's about, and I want to talk about that, and what that looks like, and how it works. In the past little while, prequels and origin stories have become somewhat of a cliche. Think of your Willy Wonka stories, Disney retellings and remakes, and even the Star Wars prequels. Many of these lend themselves to great sympathy for the characters that's different from the original. And despite their trendiness, I find that some of them are actually done and handled quite well. I enjoyed the new take on Sleeping Beauty's villain with Maleficent, and I think the Star Wars prequels, and especially the Clone Wars, of course, construct Anakin in a way that really helps carry his story pre-Vader. But something I don't think enough creators are considering with other villain origin stories is, why on earth does that story need to be told in the first place? What's the point of returning to an old side character's youth and watching them become who they become? What's the point in giving a character more backstory in a remake if it doesn't help expand the soul of the original or do something new and functional and interesting for the story? One remake I don't love was the live-action Beauty and the Beast, and I have many reasons. But for the sake of this video, I specifically want to target their slight recreation of Gaston. It is mentioned in the film that Gaston is a war veteran of some kind. And while I think this could be an interesting backstory for a new character, I don't think Gaston needed that. I don't sympathize with his PTSD, and it changed nothing for the story. Sometimes characters are just jerks, and sometimes I don't really care about their past if they're trying to force a good person to marry them, or harm innocent people, or behave the way that Gaston just does in general. He can just be a jerk. I think a person's choice to be bad and do bad things can be compelling enough for them as a villain, them making that choice. I don't need to see what makes him more prone to violence or afraid of the beast, and he can just be Gaston, right? So then what does the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes do that makes it worth it? I mean, it definitely was a cash grab to some extent. I'm sure Suzanne Collins was like, oh, I could make some money off of that. But she's also a really good author who sort of laid the foundation for the new dystopian, like, young adult world that we've come to know and love and become obsessed with for a brief period of time before realizing that most of the other stories weren't as good. But Suzanne Collins, like, she laid this foundation. She started this, and she might write a cash grab, but it's gonna be good, or at least meaningful, and at least have a point. And the Hunger Games franchise has a lot of stories that it could expand upon. But what made this story worth telling? We already know where Snow ends up, right? So what's the point of talking about his youth? Well, the book and the movie both do a few things. First of all, we're given a world that is already interesting to us, that we're already invested in, but given some cool foundational world building things about it and characters, or the ancestors of characters, and it's enjoyable, it's new, it's refreshing, and it's a little bit fan servicey, but in a way that just makes it familiar and gives us more to explore. And we're given someone to root for. Two people, in fact, if not more people, but two main people. And it becomes a little confusing and contentious. There's actual plot. It has an interesting setting. It has character arcs. It has growth and contention. But it's also President Snow's story. Coriolanus Snow is a sympathetic character, damaged by war and loss. But he's never without that ambition. In fact, I'd say he's ambitious to a fault, and is constantly compared to his peers and challenged by every single angle in his life. Every authority figure, every person he interacts with contradicts something within him, and he has to find out where he's going to settle. And we're not concerned with what's going to happen. We are concerned with how it's going to happen. What Suzanne Collins did was write a character we know becomes bad. And she shows us how, but it's not in a sad, inescapable way. It's sad because Snow makes a choice, has opportunities at happiness, but still chooses power. And before we can consider that he has no other choice, he is contrasted with his friend Sejanus, who wants to do what's right, and Lucy Gray, who wants to remain true to herself, even if that means that she has to accept parts of herself that she does not love, or parts of herself that have done bad things to other people. She can accept that and remain true to herself. What's fun about the tension in this film is that if it were some stranger we were following, instead of President Snow, we would probably think that maybe he's making his choices for the right reasons, or he's a little bit misguided, or he's in a difficult situation. But we know who he becomes, and at least in the book we have an inner monologue of how iffy his thought process is, and then we question every move he makes and the real intent behind each move. And we're not watching a character become President Snow. The character's true self is simply being exposed to us, for lack of a better word. So what I think some origins want to do with characters is just rewrite them entirely. But we know he becomes bad. We know that he has that capacity. We're not being attached to a new character that feels separate from Snow. It is never lost on you, especially when you're reading the book, that something isn't quite right with him, that between his upbringing and his values, he is not already the most trustworthy person to be working with. And if you have any doubts about that, you have him contrasted with people like Sejanus and Lucy Gray, whose intentions are better meaning, I'd say more worthy of their efforts, rather than Snow's, which are very power-based and fear-based. Paired with this is Suzanne Collins' original theme, that war is bad, and not in a weepy, sending your boys off to defend your people kind of way, to the front lines, they're so brave, but in a way that it tarnishes everything good and hurts both the defeated and the victors. The way it steals your humanity, and she managed to keep that theme, and that theme can drive the story better than some fan service references to the original trilogy. It's more than that. It's more than the theme of the hanging tree or Katniss. It is the theme of war. So that character exploration and truth to that character, combined with a continuation of theme, is what makes us worth it. What makes it good for the film and the book are the dynamic characters, the intense action, the beautiful music, lyrics from the folk songs of Lucy Gray, the acting, dialogue, and the little details that show that the filmmakers know that the fans are watching, but that it's more than just for the fans. You could tell the movie was made with care, was treated like a film, like it had artistic intent, and you can tell the book had a point. And while it could definitely be a cash grab, it was a well-made one, I'd say. And Suzanne Collins knows what she's about. She knows what The Hunger Games is about. It's not about the gimmick, it's not about the games, it's about the message, it's about the war. It's how it tarnishes you and twists you and warps you into someone who cannot be saved. So, those are my thoughts. I already loved The Hunger Games before, but this one, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I enjoyed it. I appreciate you guys listening. I moved the camera a little bit. And I think you're all the best. I won't be getting a ton of videos out. I'm still working on my schedule. Busy and stressed and tired and wanting to hibernate as per the usual of winter. But you're all the best and I appreciate everything you guys do. And I will see you another time with another video. Bye.